Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I wanted to point out one exciting thing that I just recently launched, and they're these crew neck sweatshirts. So comfy and soft on the inside, and I also have women's tank tops, men's tank tops, hoodies, and long sleeve shirts and t-shirts. Be sure to check out the link up here, and without further ado, let's get started. Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to have you back. Today I'm finally talking about my North Korean experience. I traveled to North Korea in August of 2017, and though I wasn't able to collect as much footage as I would have liked, I'm hoping to show you clippets here and there during this this little chat, and hoping to just give you my perspective on North Korea. For those of you who don't know, in February of 2017, I broke 2 Guinness World Records, being the fastest person and fastest female to travel to every country in the world.
American Cassie set out in July of 2015 to become the fastest person to travel to every sovereign nation. When she completes her journey, she'll also become the first documented woman to travel to every country in the world.
Also becoming the first woman on record to travel to every single country in the world.
This morning, we're focusing on women and exploration and hearing from those who paved the way for modern-day female explorers, like Cassie, the first woman on record to travel alone to every country in the world.
So when I say country, I'm talking about sovereign nations. There are 193 sovereign nations, and then I went to an additional 3 countries, Taiwan, Kosovo, and Palestine, making it Expedition 196. In all honesty, I think I went to around 203 countries, but when we talk about sovereign nation, just to give you a little bit of facts here, sovereign nation has their own centralized government, monetary system. There are other countries that they own that are called usually autonomous territories, autonomous regions, or territories or colonies. So for instance, if we look at the US and then we look at Puerto Rico is a country that I didn't go to. It's not a sovereign nation, it's actually owned by the United States. Let's take another example, Reunion Island off the eastern coast of Africa. That country is owned by France. I did go to Reunion Island. I never visited Scotland or Wales because they're owned by the UK. But that's kind of a just basic overlining of countries and sovereign nations. There are over 320 countries in the world, plus, if we count all the territories and colonies and autonomous regions and even unnamed places around the world. So let's get started. Initially, I was gonna visit North Korea for my 28th birthday. I spent my 27th birthday in Mongolia, and it was beautiful and amazing and tranquil, and I had no Wi-Fi, I had no cell phone service. It was beautiful and amazing. But this birthday, I wanted to spend it in North Korea because I am a strange person and I like to go to these places, and I actually enjoy going to these places, like North Korea, like Syria, like Somalia, Afghanistan. I actually enjoy it, and I enjoy learning about those cultures and debunking what America has told us about those places for our whole lives and what makes us afraid to go to these places. I ended up not going on my 28th birthday. I think my trip got pushed back. I missed something happened, but I wasn't able to go. The visa for North Korea costs around $1,100 for US citizens, and it actually costs around $300 for Chinese citizens. I know that because I was in a group of all Chinese tourists, and I was talking to them about how much they paid and everything, and the formalities to get into North Korea as someone from China. It's a hefty price as an American, and these tour companies really take a risk by bringing US citizens into North Korea. It wasn't even 6 months before I went that the student from American University, Otto, had passed away after coming back from North Korea. It happened a few months before I went. They found out they passed away, and he was in a coma, so I think it was in March. And then I was in August that I went. So I think it was less than 6 months that we found out about his death that I went. I wanted to go to North Korea and Afghanistan, Somalia. I wanted to go to all the precarious nations first, in the first few months of my expedition, because I was just so eager to experience them, and I was just truly driven and curious about these countries that America has made us so incredibly afraid of over the years through the media. I knew it wasn't that way. I knew that they weren't as bad as what the media was telling us that they were. And I didn't know why or how, but I knew I had to go there to find out. So I had major drive to want to go to these countries in the beginning of my expedition. But it was actually my parents who wanted me to wait because they thought that it'd get better. But let's be honest, in the world, there's always a country that is suffering. There's war going on, there's something going on, nothing's ever really gonna get better. I don't want to be a pessimist, but living for 29 years, this is what I've seen. So I just don't see it as changing like in next year. All of a sudden peace is here. It's gonna take time, if anything, and I knew that Syria wasn't gonna be any better, North Korea, if I'd waited. If anything, once Trump entered office, I wouldn't be able to go to those countries. So I knew that I had to go there before he got into office. I was really nervous when I got into Beijing. I really did want to put all of my stuff in a locker because my external hard drives, my camera, my phone, it had all this information from my expedition that I just could not risk losing. So in an effort to kind of have all my stuff locked up, I missed my flight. I was actually on the phone with Chase. Chase is terrible. Chase Bank. I will just say that. I will warn you, as someone who's traveled to every country in the world with Chase cards, if you buy like a flight in a different country with the Chase debit card, it'll give you a confirmation number, and I've had this happen more oftentimes than not, especially if you use Chase Ultimate Rewards, they'll give you the confirmation for the flight, but then they won't communicate with the airline to ensure that you've actually booked your flight. So when I showed up for my flight to Shenyang, it turns out that case had happened and I didn't even book my flight. I woke up with a really bad headache that day. I remember just like a migraine, and I missed my flight to Shenyang, and if I couldn't get on the next one, I wouldn't be going to North Korea, and I'd already paid for the visa. So I did whatever I could to get on the next flight, and I made it to Shenyang. I met everyone there. It was 2 other tourists from China. They were around my age and they spoke English. And then the 2 tour guides. I think they had the Chinese tour guide, and then if you buy my book, you'll see my North Korean journal in there, and it might be in there. I can't remember. We boarded the flight, Air Koryo, I think that's how you pronounce it. That's the North Korea airline. It's the only airline that you can take to get in and out of North Korea. It was really weird to fly on that plane. I mean, there were probably like 6 or 7 of us, and the plane was pretty much empty. I think there were a couple dignitaries on the plane, officials or something like that. But when we got on, the flight attendants were they looked exactly the same. I'm talking the same exact hairstyle, the same exact lipstick, the same exact demeanor. They were almost like robots. They're also very young women, but they were beautiful, but they also it was very like robotic. It was kind of strange in that way. And when we got on the plane, they handed us our declaration cards, and we had to literally declare everything. I mean, they said, if you have underwear, you have to declare how many pairs of underwear you have in your bag. A toothbrush, you have to declare. If there's something you don't declare, they'll catch you at the border, and it might not be a good situation. So you have to declare everything. So without going through my whole bag, which is in the overhead bin, I had to actually go through everything in my mind. Like, what did I pack in that bag that I have to declare? So I declared, I thought was everything, but it wasn't. Unfortunately, I forgot this one little thing, which I'll tell you about in a second. And then they gave us kind of our welcome pack. And inside this little paper bag were about 5 postcards, and they were North Korean postcards. The first one was like a little North Korean girl holding a flag, very cute. The next one was soldiers shooting another a United States soldier. Okay, the next one was a couple North Korean soldiers shooting the Pentagon. And the next one was something along the lines of the same thing pretty much. There were also a couple little North Korean pins, like clothing pins. And when she gave those to me, I just looked at her and I kind of like, I was like, I probably shouldn't smile because to them, it's actually not a joke how much they hate America. But I couldn't help but just kind of like see if she would maybe realize how messed up these cards were. And she didn't give me any kind of look. I kind of looked at her and I was like, she just had a blank stare on her face. I'm like, all right, welcome to North Korea. So they gave us burgers on the plane. They were in a perfect little container, a perfect bun. They were very dry, but I remember like they weren't bad, but they were very dry burger, a little patty, and then a little glass of like this purple juice that they had poured. I don't know what it was, but the burger was okay. I will say that. It was a pretty quick flight. It was actually really beautiful flying over China and like viewing North Korea, and we flew over water. I remember that because I'm not great at flying over water. We landed in North Korea. One of the Chinese tourists who was around my age, she had these like little pieces of fruit with like a seed inside. They told us to throw out any fruit that we had. None of it could enter the country. So she was trying to eat them, and she gave me some, and so I ate them. Got off the plane, we were walking in, and we had these seeds on us. And we're like, we gotta throw these seeds out because they said, well, you can't bring any seeds into North Korea, any fruit, any meats, nothing. So when we get to the border control, it's like you're on a movie set. The guards are there and you're the only people in the airport because you're the only plane that came in, and they're just standing there and they're staring at you. And I'm like, I gotta throw these seeds out. So I kind of take the seeds in my hand, mixed with like some tissue and water bottle, and I just like threw it in the trash, and I thought hopefully they don't notice. So as we were waiting for our bags, they kind of were like looking at us like, why are you waiting for your bag? Like they made it feel a little bit awkward, but it's like, what are we gonna do? We have to wait for our bags. So we get our bags, we go through the baggage security, and they scan mine and they see that I didn't declare something. And it was probably a bad thing not to declare. I had this little wooden USB that someone had given to me to put my presentation on for one of my speaking engagements. I didn't use it, there was nothing on it, but I didn't declare it because I forgot about it. And they saw, and I said, oh, you take it? I don't need it. I don't need it. So they took it, and then they said, you can keep it. You can keep it. I'm like, I don't want to. But I don't know if they even kept it. I can't remember. At that point, I had met my tour guide, Miss Lee, and I said, is it a big deal? They found that USB, and she said, no, it's okay. It's okay. But she looked worried, and she's like, it's okay. And I'm like, okay, I'll assume it's okay, but it's probably not okay. Moving on. They put us in the bus and we headed to the hotel, which was the same hotel that the student from American University, Otto, had stayed in. I didn't realize that until I got there. There were only 2 hotels that they would put us in, and that was one of them. And it was weird to know that. It was like weird to know that, you know. I made sure to just be on my toes the whole time. It was honestly, it felt like I was walking on eggshells. Like I felt like everyone was watching me at all times. Someone was watching me. When we walked into this hotel, it was just like this marble grand place. But it felt very outdated in a way, like very outdated. So they checked us in. You had to pay extra to get your own room in the hotel, and I didn't have the money to do that. So otherwise you shared with someone from the group. So I ended up sharing the room with a 45-year-old Chinese tourist, and she didn't speak any English. I didn't mind that because you can honestly communicate with people even if you don't speak the same language. But I wasn't really like too thrilled about having to share a room. I really wanted to kind of be able to reflect and sleep well and try and have the best experience possible and film. And I found that to be really difficult sharing a room with someone because you want to respect their privacy as well. And it's hard when you're in this little tiny room with 2 beds and you know, you don't want to disrupt them. Anyways, it's not my forte to really film with other people around. So in the middle of the room, they had this like desk, but it almost looked like one of those boom boxes like from the 1970s, those brown ones with the holes in it and the kind of knobs, but it didn't play music. I remember we kind of like made signals to one another, like, is this maybe, we didn't want to say it because we were like, maybe they're listening. But we both thought that that was maybe what that was. I made sure that whatever I said was nice about North Korea because I was there and you never know who's listening. That's the thing. I did a little bit of filming. Actually, I learned more about the Chinese culture than I did North Korea when I was in North Korea because I was around the Chinese tourists 24/7, 3 days straight. And there's such an interesting divide between the youth, like my generation of Chinese, and the older generation. There's kind of a big gap there in the way of, let me give you an example. We were on the bus driving around North Korea and they stopped for a pit stop to use the restroom. And it was in the woods. It was off the side of the road, like in the bush. And all the Chinese tourists got out, and all the older ones, I want to say older than like 35, 40. That's not old, but there is a generation gap between like the millennials and the next generation when it comes to specifically Chinese culture, I noticed, and the younger Chinese tourists who I was able to communicate with. So the older ones got off the bus and they were pooping off the side of the road, and that was their bathroom break. I understand getting off the side of the road and like going pee, even as a woman, you know, if you gotta go, you gotta go. But pooping on the side of the road when you're on a proper tour, to me, I felt that that was kind of, you know, and I brought that up to I mean, it's their choice and I wasn't making a thing out of it at all. I didn't even care. Because at one point I had to as well, because I ate something, I'm telling you, the food in North Korea, you might get stomach upset if you ever go. But the younger generation, they were telling me that yes, like they didn't go on the side of the road, but when it comes to the older generation, they kind of have more of a primal instinct when it comes to certain things, and they act on it more than the younger generation does, or my generation. I'm not comparing young and old here, by the way. I don't want it to make it sound like that. I'm just talking about differences in generations is what I'm trying to say. And the generation I'm speaking about is it would be our parents' generation as millennials, and this is how they were acting. And so they were explaining to me that there is kind of a disconnect, and they never really caught up to modern day traditional way of mannerisms, for example, and just being respectful and that sort of thing. But the younger Chinese kind of have caught on to that. This isn't my own personal experience. This is what I was actually learning from the Chinese themselves when I was there. So no disrespect at all. Everyone's got their own way of doing things and their own cultures, and everyone's different. So I'm not gonna go through in this video every single thing that we did. It's probably gonna be a really long video as is, but I do wanna highlight some points on some of the most frequently asked questions that I get. And that is that when people ask me, is North Korea like a place where it's all fake? They show you what they want you to see and everything like that.